Welcome to Paul versus Destin. This week's episode is all going to be about the very strange structure of game publishing right now. So it's certainly in a strange state with PlayStation games coming out on Xbox and Xbox games coming out on PlayStation. We're going to get into it right now. Paul, how the heck are you?
Doing good, Destin. How about you?
Doing okay. Glad to have you today. Might be a little bit of a shorter episode, but on the show today, we're going to talk about all of the delays and just this strange state of publishing. So let's start right there, because Deathloop is out this week, on a game that was created by a now Xbox-owned studio, Bethesda, specifically Arcane, getting tons of 10 out of 10s, praise everywhere. And guess where it's only available? It's only available on PlayStation. And then earlier this year, back in April, MLB The Show launched on Xbox, a game developed by PlayStation. So you have, and Deathloop will eventually come to Xbox also, but right now the only place you can play the Xbox game is on a PlayStation console. The same will take place with Ghostwire Tokyo. So just, it's almost comedic, right? Like, what's your reaction to all of this?
It is funny, and it's shaping up where it'll probably be one of the better reviewed mainstream games of the year. And it makes you kind of wonder, like, should they have tried to go back on the deal if possible, like to land this in their selection here? Because I mean, think about if Deathloop was a Microsoft exclusive alongside Forza and alongside Halo in the same like 3-month window, and PlayStation truly had nothing. Because like, PlayStation now, it lucks out because they can kind of squeeze out a potential Game of the Year contender on their platform, at least. Obviously, we know it's not made by them, and yet it is the only console that you can play it. So it is kind of hilarious. And like, well, I don't know if it's a 10 out of 10 game for me. Like, I certainly like it, and I understand the press it's getting, but it's so funny to see this unfolding the way it has.
Yeah, I personally haven't had a chance to play yet, but I've been seeing nothing but praise showered on Deathloop, and it's just really, really comedic. And then when we go back to April and we see MLB The Show selling like top of the charts for April, and then still it's number 10 for August, so against everything else, MLB The Show is still selling well. Is there a world where PlayStation could have an Xbox published game, Deathloop, as their game of the year potentially, and then Xbox could have a sports game of the year, MLB The Show 21, that is made by PlayStation? It's just such a crazy world. I think it's kind of a good thing, honestly.
It's a good thing, and yet I think this is short-lived on both counts. I don't think this is going to be like a thing that happens. I think this is just kind of two different weirdly specific circumstances. So like the MLB thing was because of the MLB. Like, yeah. The MLB like wanted this to happen. They wanted it to be multi-platform. So whatever deal they have with Sony, that kind of worked its way into this Game Pass idea with Microsoft, and that worked out for their benefit. I don't see Sony doing this unless they are forced to on other games, but it's hard to even imagine another game where they would kind of be made to do this by some sort of outside third party. So it's maybe Marvel is the only thing I can think of. If Marvel's like, hey, you know what? Maybe you should put Wolverine on Game Pass or something, which I doubt will happen. But that's what I mean. It's like some sort of third party. Whereas the Deathloop thing, obviously that was a holdover from Bethesda still being independent. And I guess it was just too late to change things, or Microsoft didn't want to exert the effort to do so. And I think it's pretty clear that pretty much everything from Bethesda and Arcane is going to be Microsoft exclusive going forward. So I doubt we will see this exact situation come up again, unless they buy someone else and a different game goes into the situation if it's from a publisher that's doing an existing deal with Sony.
So Deathloop 2, you don't see it being cross-platform, probably Xbox exclusive.
Yeah, I would say so for sure. If there is a Deathloop 2, which I probably imagine there would be after this, but I don't think it would be the same thing again. They're not going to do another timed exclusive deal with Sony, no way.
Yeah, so one of my questions were actually, is publishing across platforms a temporary trend? Yes or no? You say no. I think we could see it again in the future. I think games like Psychonauts 2 coming out across platform is a good thing for Microsoft. And if Sony is willing to continue doing this, I don't see why Xbox would be like, no, we don't want your money, unless they're trying to lock in that exclusivity. I think Deathloop being on Xbox exclusively would have been great. I think the future Elder Scrolls game will be Xbox exclusive, but I think there are cases where cross-platform makes sense. Like it made sense for Minecraft. Minecraft is making tons of money on the Nintendo platform, right? On the Switch and on PlayStation, but it's Microsoft owned. So they're not a stranger to it, but are we going to see the major games like right now, Deathloop, which everybody is discussing, continue to do that? I would agree, no.
Yeah, it's going to have to be really specific circumstances, I think. Like Minecraft was so ubiquitous, like it was almost impossible to put that back in the bottle, like given
Yeah.
the history of the game. Whereas like I can see this happening in select circumstances, but I also kind of doubt on the other end of this that like Sony is going to want to be paying Microsoft directly for timed exclusives of Microsoft owned games. Like that's its own. That doesn't really seem like that works out great for either party. Like it's just kind of awkward. And like I don't think Microsoft would want to give Sony exclusivity after, especially after seeing something like this unfold. And I don't know if Sony would want to keep paying that because like they're getting some benefit with Deathloop here, but they're getting none of the credit. And all we're kind of talking about how goofy this is. Not that like Sony has some amazing game. It's like they just paid some money to like do a deal and like keep it off Xbox for a year. Like it's not, this isn't Insomniac or Sony Santa Monica or something. So I think it's a little bit different, and no one really likes when companies do this. I don't think there's been comparisons to the Tomb Raider game that Microsoft. I mean, they like helped publish it to a certain extent, and then that was kept off, rival platforms. So I don't think people love when this kind of scenario unfolds, but it's just a funny situation in this case, I think.
Well, the most recent one, Star Wars. So Star Wars was originally an Xbox exclusive. Now it's publishing exclusively on a Sony platform. Sony fans are touting it as a big win because it is. It is a massive win for them. But how do you feel about a game like that that's being remade by Aspyr exclusively for the PlayStation platform for what we assume is at least 1 year?
It's kind of annoying. Like I would give it that because of where the series originated, and like that was like such a big series on Xbox originally, and it is strange to me to be doing this without EA BioWare at all, like the original people who made the game. That strikes me as odd, and this is a company that does all ports, and I don't know what the final product of a Coder remake is going to be from this studio under these circumstances. On the flip side, I can understand why like it's not quite the same. Like this is the Microsoft Tomb Raider thing again. So at least Sony has like skin in the game in that they are, they've invested in making this project happen. Hence why the exclusivity, just like Microsoft did with Tomb Raider. And yet, if you complained about Microsoft doing this with Tomb Raider, you should probably also be complaining about Sony doing this in a similar way. Overall, I think it's a project I need to know more about before I could fully judge it. But I don't love the exclusivity aspect of it in this case, even if it is like quote unquote a win for Sony.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what ends up happening with all this. I think MLB will continue to be cross-platform. It'd be a strange one to just suddenly go PlayStation exclusive after them saying, no, we want to be cross-platform. And like people like myself tried it out. I'm not really into a baseball game, but I have to imagine they've converted a lot of people to longtime fans because of the fact that it was on Game Pass, etc. The other big news that happened this week, this is probably going to air on Sunday like it normally does, but we found out just before recording that Battlefield 2042 was delayed to November 19th. And this joins a whole bunch of games getting delays right now. So Dying Light 2 was delayed to February 2020. Horizon was delayed to February 2022 recently. And well, Battlefield only delayed like 1 month. Let's take a look at 2022 really quick and just some of the games that are coming out. Dying Light 2, Horizon Forbidden West, and then there's The Witch Queen, the Saints Row reboot, Lego Star Wars, Tiny Tina, Gran Turismo 7, Sifu, Pokemon Legends, and Elden Ring are all in Q1. All in Q1 2022.
Let's assume some of those get delayed out of Q1 again, but even still, that's pretty nuts. And the Battlefield thing is weird because I'm almost suspicious of a delay that low. Like I given how little we've seen of the game, I'm like, is that really going to be the final date, or is that going to launch in a good state? But yeah, that is a massively crowded window now that I am very much not looking forward to. Like I have for games I just personally really want to play, I have Horizon, The Witch Queen, and Saints Row within like a week. I think it's one
Yeah.
week is all of those, which is nuts. So something's gonna have to go. It's probably gonna have to be Saints Row, but that's a bummer to me because that is one of the ones I'm looking forward to. But this always happens. I think it's just happening to a greater extent this year because of the COVID delays, and like that is. I also think we're going to see some problems with the games that launch this fall that are not ready. It depends on the game, but I don't know if like Call of Duty Vanguard is going to be like in the full masterful shape that they want it to be in or whatever. We also have questions about, as we know, the Halo Infinite campaign, and then there's this Battlefield news where with only a month delay. So I
Why
think there are
1 month? What was the bug that they found that they're like, we just need one more month and we got this.
This happens. I mean, this is didn't they do this exact thing with Cyberpunk where they delayed it like 1 month? And
yeah,
I
but Cyberpunk, come on, maybe a year would have been a better window.
Cyberpunk was trending today because people were comparing the Battlefield delay to trying to avoid a Cyberpunk scenario. But like, I don't think we can use Cyberpunk as a metric because that was such like a unique disaster that I don't even, I don't know if that's the best model to use for comparing delays. So hopefully nothing is going to be that extreme. And I don't think anyone wants to release anything in that state, but there is pressure. I mean, you saw even on the rumors of a delay today, EA stock dropped, and then by the end of the day, they announced it wasn't being delayed out of the holiday window, and then went back up again. And like investors are nuts about this stuff, and it's kind of annoying. And this is why games get released before they're supposed to, because fans don't really care. Honestly, fans just want the game to work when it launches, but investors are like, got to get it in that holiday window, got to get it in before the fiscal year, and that is what happened to Cyberpunk, literally. So that's a scenario that keeps repeating itself, even though investors themselves don't always understand the industry as well as they think they do, or at all.
So with all these delays, a lot of them delaying to Q1 actually makes a lot of sense. It's a new quarter. For some people, I think their financial quarter ends still in the next year. I don't really know how, like, the exact dates on all that stuff. But anyway, I'm really, really curious about exactly what you said. Do you think that they can actually improve those games? And the question I actually want to ask is, do you think if they would have delayed Cyberpunk 1 year and they launched in the same quarter, do you think Cyberpunk would have launched better or like in a state that was acceptable, at least on the base platforms? I think not.
I think it's possible. I think we would have avoided a large amount of the controversies. Like where we've come from a year from today is at least performance wise it is dramatically improved, and like with some bug, like hundreds and hundreds of additional bug fixes. What hasn't changed is kind of the, like, if you didn't like the core of the game, if you thought there was too much kind of missing content, if you thought they didn't do anything to the life paths, like nothing like that has changed.
Yeah.
And yet I still think it would have done really well. Like it sold 15 million copies in December, or 13 million or whatever, which is crazy. I still think it would have sold 13 million copies a year later. I think they would have avoided a lot of this negative press. I think it still probably would have under-delivered from the hype that was set up for it. But that was almost destined to happen at this point. But I think that probably would have been the right call. I mean, clearly what happened was not the right call. So it certainly, I don't think would have hurt the game. I don't think it would have completely solved all the issues or anything like that. We still have a long way to go for that game, but it's an interesting question because I definitely still think it would have helped for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think the base platforms were salvageable. I don't think they ever should have marketed them. And the biggest issue was they made it seem like the base platforms were going to be fine, and they are not fine. They still aren't fine. And I don't think they ever will be. It should have never been part of the marketing, but they kind of got locked into this. They should have did what Flight Simulator did, launch on the next gen platforms, right? And then say, hey, if you want to play on the base ones, you can through the cloud playing on a Series X or whatever. But they lose that 100 million demographic for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4
You look
Pro.
at 150 million consoles and you just can't say no. But I mean, the worst part was they lied. They just lied that it was in a good state. They said it literally said it runs surprisingly well on last gen platforms. That is the only thing we heard about last gen before it launched,
It's
and that's all
fine. It's
anyone had to
great.
go on.
It runs great.
And they
It's
didn't give out
totally
review
fine.
codes, obviously, for
Yeah.
that, so no one, until they bought it.
They
But
gave us PC, and guess what? PC was a great platform. I played on PC, and I think it was a lot of fun on PC. I had a
it is like a
blast.
it is like a 500% better game on PC than like on a base console. Like the gap size between those is wild. So this is why I think it's also like a pretty specific circumstance that like, well, we can also worry about AAA games being in good shape or bad shape. It is hard for me to believe, like with that as a cautionary tale, things getting that bad with that major of a project again. Like even with all my concerns about Halo Infinite's campaign, I still don't imagine it would launch anywhere close to that with that level of, bugs or lack of features or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Pulling back the curtain a little bit, I did my performance review on the console versions of Cyberpunk, and I think Dan Stapleton reached out to me for IGN. I don't like doing reviews for IGN because you just get flamed, when you do reviews. But for Cyberpunk, I was like, no, I'd rather not. Can you assign it to somebody else? Just because I don't like to do it. And then I did the testing on the base platforms, and it was just abysmal. It was absolutely atrocious, right? And I'm like, Dan, I'd like to do this one. I think I have very specific points that I can show, and I did it. Like, because people needed to know how bad this game was on base platforms.
Well, and it was so bad. I'm assuming people
I gave it a
didn't
4.
like go after you. Yeah, like that's
No.
what I mean. It's like it was so bad. Everyone's like, "Oh, this is just their fault." Yes.
Even still, there were a few people who tried to do stuff, but they were pretty quickly shut down. They're like, he gave it a 4. Like, like the PC version of the game. Yeah, the PC version of the game is different than the base platform versions of the game. It's a different product completely. It's a game that doesn't work and a game that mostly works. There's still bugs on the PC version that hold it back, but yeah. Anyway, just sort of going back to the actual conversation we were having. The games that I'm looking forward to are definitely Elden Ring, probably Horizon Forbidden West, Destiny. I'm torn between Horizon Forbidden West and honestly Gran Turismo 7. I know in the previous episode we sort of talked about how it's sort of but I don't know why, but I've been really wanting to play more racing games lately, and Gran Turismo 7 looks interesting. Now that's the other video I was going to make. It was about Gran Turismo 7 and how it's very controversial online right now because there are a lot of scenes. Like, look, a lot of scenes don't look great in that trailer. And a lot of people pointed that out. But when you go read the comments, the fans of the Gran Turismo series are pointing out all of the changes that were made to the game that were exactly what they asked for. So there's sort of this weird thing where we have a lot of footage that looks awesome in the Gran Turismo 7 trailer, and then a lot of footage that looks quite poor. And it's such a weird mishmash situation that I'm sort of interested to talk more about. But
yeah, it really varied from shot to shot, which I found kind of baffling, but I don't know, maybe there's some sort of technical explanation for that.
There's shots with like ray tracing on the hood, and the cars all look gorgeous, and they're redoing the intros from GT 1, 2, and 3. And then all of a sudden there's like this wide shot where it looks not good that a lot of people are pointing out, like, hey, like, what experience am I getting? Am I getting the ray tracing and all that stuff? Or is that just like in replay mode? Like which product is being sold here? So yeah, a little bit of a surprising mix for that reveal, mixed reaction even too. But Elden Ring,
let me know how that goes, because I will be not putting that on my list with all those other games because I'm just not a racing person really. But I'll probably play Forza just because that I'll probably have a little more time for that if
that's November,
depending when it comes out. Oh, that's November. Yeah,
oh wait, do you mean so Forza Horizon 5 is November?
Yeah.
Forza Motorsport, which is more of sim.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's we don't even.
I just group all racing games together. Yeah. I'm not like I don't discern them between casual racing and sim racing. I'm not that smart. So
we can team up for Witch Queen maybe.
Yeah.
What else did I have on here? Why do you think everybody went to Q1? Was the last question I had for this episode. Because it's sort of like they moved out of the holiday quarter, which is fairly barren right now. It's like Halo and Forza. What else? It's the PlayStation game Kena, right?
I mean, Kina's on the lower tier. We still have like Far Cry. There's Guardians of the Galaxy.
Those are all third
There's
party, launching on
oh,
multiple
you're talking. Oh, you're
platforms.
talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
Are you talking about just
yeah.
first party?
Well,
Oh,
no, no,
well,
no.
yeah.
So
Then
good point on the third parties. What else we got?
there's some good. I mean, Call of Duty, Halo, Far Cry, Guardians of the Galaxy. I guess
Why?
Kina.
You're the only one I ever heard is like, I am stoked for Guardians of the Galaxy. All the
I'm
commentators are
just
like,
saying it is
okay,
a
Paul.
major. It is from Square Enix. It is Eidos Montreal. That is a major
Yeah.
title. It's
There's
a
an
AAA
interesting,
title.
so there's a really interesting reaction to a lot of the games that were revealed. Like, I was having a conversation on Twitter with a friend of mine actually, and I said Wolverine is hands down the biggest announcement that was made at the PlayStation conference, maybe Star Wars, right? And he said, no, it was God of War Ragnarok. Now, in gaming circles, he's correct. God of War Ragnarok is the biggest thing that PlayStation announced. You look at the views of the trailers and everything like that. But my argument is that titles like Star Wars, Spider-Man, and Wolverine, those not only get the gaming audience, but the parents and the kids that come into the store who aren't in the gaming ecosphere or whatever you want to call it, they're going to buy the Star Wars game. They're going to buy the Wolverine game. They're going to buy the Spider-Man game. Those games will sell insanely well, insanely well. So,
yeah, I think it's especially the Marvel games these days. I mean, we saw that with Miles Morales, how well that sold, and like that was not even a full game technically, and that did amazingly well. So, I mean, I still think God of War is big enough at this point to just put up massive sales too.
It will. I'm not saying anything's going to sell poorly. I'm just saying I think Star Wars and Spider-Man will do better than God of War.
You know what I'm worried about selling a little bit?
What?
Deathloop. Like it's so unique, and it's just obviously a totally original kind of wacky IP that was not very easy to sell in trailers. Like not just the IP, but like I made a tweet the other day. I'm like, I didn't know other players could invade your game until the game was out, and it's like telling me to invade other players. I'm like, in all the marketing, I somehow missed that message the entire time. So I feel like that's a hard game to kind of sell. So I just sort of wonder how it's going to do as a brand new IP, even with the review scores. One thing I've learned is that, review scores are one thing, but it's with movies too. Like they can't sell a game on their own. So it would really have to spread through word of mouth.
Look at Control. Cross-platform title, right? Deathloop, meanwhile, is only on PlayStation and PC right now. Granted, PC is a huge swath.
But it's not running well on
PC.
It's having a lot of problems on PC right now.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But anyway, Control had sort of the similar problem where 10 out of 10 game, lots of people praise it and love it, but it doesn't have the oomph that just slapping Star Wars on something does. Star Wars games will sell well. I have no doubt in my mind about that, because like my dad would buy a Wolverine game. My dad loves comics, right? And he would buy a console just to play a Wolverine game. Some people,
this runs in the family then, huh? Did you inherit your Wolverine fandom from your dad?
Yes, actually.
That's awesome.
He's the one that sort of like got me into it when I was a kid, and same with Batman. He was really into Batman, and probably too young. He gave me Death in the Family, the trade paperback, and I'm like, oh God, they beat Robin to death in this game, in this comic. But anyway, things not to do with my son. Yeah. I've sort of lost my train of thought when you made me think about my comics. But the point is, people love comics. They love Star Wars. And I think God of War is still going to be a massive success. I still think Spider-Man Miles Morales would sell better.
So why are you discounting Guardians of the Galaxy so much? If that's
that's the thing. I think the gamers' consensus is that doesn't look like a great game. It doesn't matter though. It has the Marvel name on it. It has Marvel characters on the cover. I do think Guardians of the Galaxy, while popular because of the movie, has less, I don't know what to call it, mind share than something like Star Wars or Wolverine. Or Spider-Man.
Well, because it's so new. Like Guardians of the Galaxy really, like it was a comic, obviously, but it was a newer comic relative to all comics, and it was, only kind of in the movies the last 5 years or whatever it's been. Mm-hmm. But to your point here, I wrote an article about this today that like Avengers is in the top 10 selling games of the last year. It's number 7, and every other game on that list is like sports game like FIFA, Madden, or it's Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, Animal Crossing. And Avengers, I mean, granted it's Marvel, but like it is an original IP that was not reviewed very well, that is always getting trashed, and it is still in the top 10 best-selling NPD games of the year, which is kind of crazy. And I think that really speaks to your point that like people just really do love playing as, I guess, Marvel superheroes, but DC superheroes, any superheroes. And that can be enough to kind of propel maybe a more average game to still do pretty well. And they're still making content for it into 2022, which is even amazing me, someone who's like actively following the game, because I didn't think it was going to make it that far, but here we are. So that's kind of impressive.
Yep. And Injustice 3, part of the NVIDIA leak recently, that was trending on Twitter. It was number 10 on Google Trends for the day. So to give you an idea of just what a comic book video game can do, literally the title of a game was number 10 on all of Google Trends. So
written about it. Damn it.
Yeah. Well, I made a video about it and nobody watched it, so don't worry about it. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's just the question I was asking though. Why do you think they all went to Q1? Why not just push out further, have more development time? Is it just to hit that revenue window?
I think it depends on the game, because a lot of these we see this every year where there's a good amount of fall games that are delayed to Q1, and it just kind of slips naturally. And then I think with COVID, we are going to see even more of that. The games that aren't pushing out even further, I mean, some of those were like really, really supposed to be holiday releases. Like Horizon certainly was supposed to be. Something like Destiny, the Witch Queen, you could say maybe Bungie wants to move away from being in the crowded fall every year, and yet they weren't going to push it to like 9 months after the season started rather than 6 months.
We still get something this holiday. We get the Gjallarhorn.
The anniversary.
Yeah.
Yes, and the Gjallarhorn. But I think for most of those games, like if you told me God of War right now was in Q1 2022 and that was its 2022 date, like I wouldn't believe you. Like, yeah. So the ones that are pushed out, I think they're just not really even dating yet at this point. Like I assume the unofficial God of War date is holiday 2022.
That'd be my
guess. I would not then be surprised to see pushed to Q1 2023 when that rolls around, depending. So,
well, God of War was already pushed. They originally planned for 2021.
I don't even count the first. That doesn't even count.
The first delay doesn't count.
I don't know what they were smoking when they picked that date.
Well, I think God of War is fall. But anyway, yeah, I think they just pushed to Q1.
Should be, and then we'll see.
I think what happened is people started pushing to Q1, and then everyone's like, well, let's all push to Q1. Because we need to have our competition to get, part of the market or whatever. But then everybody pushed to Q1, and now it's just the same competition, but in Q1. So I think third-party games like Far Cry 6, I think is going to do really, really well this holiday because it's coming out on everything. And it's a great window for anybody who's doing a multi-platform publish to release their game in. I think those games are going to do well.
I don't know. I can't get excited about that. But I mean,
I really like Far Cry 5. I didn't like the DLC or whatever, but I'm interested in 6. I like the base.
I'm interested in it, but I mean, November is still Forza, Call of Duty, Battlefield now, and Halo. That is crazy. So like, even if a lot of stuff did get pushed,
Halo's December 8th or whatever.
Oh, okay. Well, so it's like within the month. It's within the month where Forza starts, which is like the 7th or whatever. So within a month. So that is going to be a crazy period of time, regardless. So actually, is Halo going to miss the Game Awards cutoff because it's in December?
Oh, I don't know.
I think it is.
It might.
Yeah, I think the cutoff's in like late November for that, but
maybe we'll see. Maybe it'll be next year's Game of the Year because that always works out super well.
Yeah, when they patch in all this stuff that it's not launching.
Oh God. Yeah. Well, Paul, that's all we have time for this episode. So I'm going to do the hit. Thank you for joining me. Outro time. Paul, where can people find your stuff?
I'm at Paul Tassi on Twitter. You can Google me for my Forbes articles. I am also on YouTube now. And apparently, Destin doesn't know I wrote books. So you can find me on Amazon for my sci-fi books that I wrote.
I bought your book.
I know.
Yeah, so Paul writes books and stuff. I don't do that yet. But hey, you know what I do? A YouTube video a day, or at least I'm trying to. So hit that subscribe button, hit that bell if you like these sort of things. Paul, thank you for joining me as always. We'll catch you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.
Yep.